coming out on this rainy night. We just need the rain to turn to snow and we'll be golden. But welcome. We're real excited to spend our evening tonight with you talking about tribal sovereignty and water. My name is Kate Fitzpatrick. I'm the executive director of the Deschutes River Conservancy. For those of you who may be new to the DRC, we were formed in 1996 by the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, irrigation, and environmental interests with a mission to restore stream flow and water quality using partnerships and collaboration. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot more progress to make. We're really excited to be here tonight. When we're out in the community talking about water, it's more than quite often that people ask us about the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, who they are, what they are up to, what they think about water, how they're working in the basin. So what better way than to have them with us tonight talking about that. So we're honored to have our panelists and actually other tribal elders in the crowd and tribal members tonight. So thank you all for coming. We do need to thank our sponsors tonight, which are the City of Bend, Sun Country Tours, Hands in Hand Productions, who help us live stream these and make them available as videos on the website for later so you can share with your friends. And we'd also like to thank all of you who chose to donate $10 when you registered. We try to keep these accessible to the public, but every little bit helps, so we appreciate that. And I want to thank you for all being part of the work and supporting it. This past year, fish found refuge in restored streams, farmers and communities continue to share water, and families made new memories along the Deschutes because people like you choose to invest in a long-term vision for the river. As we close out the year, we're working towards a $100,000 year-end goal to sustain the partnerships, planning, and coordination necessary to make this work happen. And this is especially powerful for first-time donors. So we have one passionate river steward has committed to match every first gift. So if you have never given before, your gift dollar for dollar will be matched up to $10,000 tonight. So that means $250 becomes $500 for the river. Fundraising pitch is over, but thank you for that. Now on to the program. So I would like to introduce our expert panel. Bobby Brunoe here in the middle, the Senior Environmental and Water Manager and past of Warm Springs Power and Water Enterprise and past CEO, Secretary, Treasurer of the Warm Springs Tribe and past Natural Resources Manager. That was a really terrible intro. I'm sorry, Bobby. Bobby's been a DRC board member for a long time. He's actually the board chair right now as well. Thank you for being here, Bobby. And Austin Smith Jr. is the general manager of the branch of natural resources for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And tonight our panel will be moderated by Lisa Seals, PhD and senior program manager for the DRC. So again, thank you for being here tonight. We are gonna look forward to a great discussion. I'm gonna pass it over to you, Bobby. No, I'm gonna give you this, and it's on.
Test. Oh, there we go. Thank you, everyone. And itaktikaro, that means doesn't translate very well, but have a great or wonderful evening, as close as you can get in English. So itakti wigwa, itaktikato's morning, sorry. And so welcome. I'm glad everyone's here. Got a pretty good crowd here, and I want to recognize our tribal members and committee members that are here. And so if you guys can maybe just raise your hands so you can, here we go, thank you. And our Secretary Treasurer CEO, Edward back here. And then we have Josh Newton, who's our legal representative for the tribes here too. So thank you guys for coming tonight. With that, I'm going to introduce Leona Ike. We've known each other since we were kids and classmates, and she's an elder with the tribes, and so she's going to get up and say a few words tonight, and she's also with the Student Public Policy with OSU.
Good evening. My name is Leona Ike. I'm a direct descendant of 4 treaty chiefs, 2 for Yakima Nation, and 2 for the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs. My children are descendants of 5 treaty chiefs. My youngest grandson is descendant of 7 treaty chiefs of Warm Springs, or excuse me, of Oregon, Washington, and Montana. I am grateful to this organization for having this time of collaboration and speaking with the indigenous people and accepting indigenous knowledge, as we are the first people of this land. Whenever leadership speaks or collaboration begins, we consider the ground that we stand on and share, we consider it holy. We believe the Creator is with us right now. Water is a very important resource for tribal nations because at the time of creation, it was water that covered the earth. And when the water and land separated, the first growth was the celery, and we honor that. And then came all of our first foods. Indigenous and First People elders, we are here as the voice not only of our elders and our ancestors and former leaders, but we are also voices for the water, for the earth, for all aquatic life, for our roots and medicines, and for the human being. As I was taught and told by my elders who were taught by the Creator, we are all indigenous from somewhere, but we happen to be the host in this land. Everybody has a history, everybody has a traumatic past, and that's how this nation was built. So thank you again for this honor of inviting tribal nations to come and give input. And thank you to the organizers for including tribal nations in this discussion, because it's important that we have a say, a respectful say. And that is also our teaching. Whenever collaboration takes part between governing bodies, organizations, or institutions, we come as equal partners. So thank you for that. We appreciate that, and that is how our conduct is done. We are respectful to the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona.
Thank you very much for that. All right. Well, thank you all for being here this evening. As you all know, many of you know, I'm Lisa Seals. I'm the moderator of this panel. I feel like typically I have a bigger role than I do tonight. Tonight, I'm just going to sit here and hope that I can interject something that's worthwhile. To begin with, I guess I would ask you all to please hold your questions until the end. We are going to leave ample time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. I am going to do my best, though, to ask clarifying questions if there's something that I feel like we all could benefit from in the midst of the presentation. But otherwise, I'm really just going to leave it up to these guys to talk tonight. So thank you both so very much for being here. And with that, Bobby.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So you can see the slide up there. The first slide is this is Mount Jefferson, and what you see there is all the reservation. Our boundary of our reservation goes clear to the top of Mount Jefferson, and so a lot of people don't realize that or know that. This photo was taken. We did a mountain goat release, and while we were up there, this is a photo I took while I was up there, and we were all getting smelly by holding mountain goats, and Austin and I were there, and so that's where that photo came from, is when we were up there that day. Next one, please. What I'm going to go through is who we are. What I like to do whenever I'm talking to a group, and some folks have heard this, but they can't hear it enough, and some are brand new to this, is who the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs are and where we come from. We come from the Columbia River. The Wasco people and the Warm Springs people were salmon people. And so up and down the Columbia Basin, the Columbia is where we come from. The Paiute people come from the high plateaus in southeastern Oregon, and so that's where the Paiute people come from. So the three tribes makes the Confederacy of the Warm Springs. So the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs is made up of the three tribes. So get an understanding of where we come from, and the country that you guys are in right now is a country that we have occupied for thousands of years. And next one, please. This is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the treaty. This is a photo of the one page of the actual treaty. And here, a few years ago, they actually brought the treaty to Warm Springs at High Desert Museum for the first time ever. It had ever been in Warm Springs, and it was under armed guard. It came in armored truck. It sits in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., along with the U.S. Constitution. So they're all housed in the same place. But this is just one page of that actual treaty of ours from June 25th, 1855. And in that treaty, we reserved rights. And the key word there I want to point out is reserved. We never gave up any rights. We reserved rights, and to fish, hunt, gather our cultural foods, and to pasture livestock on unclaimed lands. So those are things that are described in our treaty of June 25th, 1855. The bottom bullet there you see is I've talked to the federal agencies a lot over the years and state agencies, but mainly federal agencies. And they have a responsibility because of the treaty to look out for those resources. They have a trust responsibility to the tribes to look out for those resources, to protect those resources, and to protect us. So that's a key thing that we're always reminding federal agencies of what their responsibility is to the tribes under the tribal trust doctrine. There's a public trust doctrine, and there's a tribal trust doctrine. And so that's the one we constantly remind them on.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Was the Confederacy then formed as part of the treaty, or was that formed separately apart from?
That was formed separately in our Constitution, which was established February 14th, 1938. Under our Constitution, we're incorporated all three tribes.
Okay, thank you.
I can go on about that, but I won't.
Thank you.
This slide here is a real special slide to me personally. And the reason it is, this can talk about a little bit of our culture and the gifts the Creator gave us. This is a slide that I presented to a culture committee years ago. And at the time, that culture committee was made up of these ladies in their 80s and 90s. So these were elders of our tribe. The youngest one was in her mid 60s at the time. That they're all gone now. But I said, I go and talk to different groups, and I want to make sure I'm getting this right. I also want to make sure that you're okay with me sharing this. And they said, yes, we are. We want people to know who we are because they don't understand who we are and what our culture is. And so these ladies were really special ladies. My grandma was one of those in her 90s that was on that committee at the time. So I always had fun with them. And so there was always a lot of laughing and joking going on. But the gifts the Creator gave to us, and they're in order. So as you can see, the first one is water. Water is very important to us. And when you go to any of our meals or ceremonies, we're always honoring water as the first gift of the Creator to take care of that and look after it forever. I was here 7 generations out, that's true, but it's beyond that. Next, Creator gave us fish, the salmon, all the different fish in the rivers around here. Then the wildlife, the deer, the elk, all the animals, to take care of them, and they'll take care of us. And then our cultural foods, our roots and berries, medicinal plants, and the different roots. I was going to mention my favorite root, which is piake. So don't ever sit in front of me with a bowl of piake because I'll eat it before you. But this is a really important slide because this is what guides us. This is part of who we are. This is part of our culture. This is part of our spirituality. This is what guides us when we're working in natural resources. And for Austin and his crew, and for our fish management, for wildlife management, for watershed management, for water management, these are what guide us. And this is really our base. And one of our most important things to us are these things the Creator gave us. These are very important gifts. Next one, please.
Before we move on, do you think you could just spend a second talking about the photo?
Yes, the photo. This photo, and actually the past photo, were photos of Celilo Falls, and were a place I never got to see, but I've heard a lot of stories of our family fishing there, my father fishing there, our relatives, our friends fishing there. It's something that was a real special place, and I've heard lots of stories from many families in Warm Springs, including my own family, about fishing at Celilo and all the different fish that they caught and the time of years they went down there and the traditions and the way they were supposed to fish. And my very first time catching a salmon was not at Celilo, because I'm too young to have seen Celilo fish there, but was at Shears Falls, which is a place that's representative of what Celilo used to be. We have traditional fishing still there on scaffolds, and I caught my first salmon on a scaffold when I was a kid down at Shears Falls.
Thank you.
This slide here is a slide of the Columbia Basin. This just kind of orient everyone to where Warm Springs is located, our ceded lands, our reservation within the basin. But as I said earlier, we're fish people, and we went up and down the Columbia Basin.
I'll just clarify, since I'm realizing that's pretty grainy for you to all see back there, but the brown area is the reservation, the current reservation. The blue area is the Deschutes Basin overlaid over the white area, which is the ceded lands of the tribes.
Now, here's the reservation itself. So it's described in the Treaty of 1855. The boundaries described in the treaty. So it's 640,000 acres proper. Most of the reservations in forested lands. A lot of people don't realize that or understand that because they go through Warm Springs, they see the high desert, they see the rangelands. But out of that 640,000 acres, 444,000 acres of our reservation is timber, forested lands. So the boundaries, as I mentioned earlier, goes to the top of Mount Jefferson. The southern boundary is Jefferson Creek and the Metolius River. The eastern boundary is the Deschutes River, as you can see, and then it's pretty much a straight line on the north end there, heading back west. So that's the reservation. Now this map has our ceded lands and also lands that we own away from the reservation. So all in the red that you see on the east side and on the, I don't know if you can see it very well, on the west side in the Willamette Valley are lands that the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs owns. The ceded lands are also described in the Treaty of 1855, and I'll just walk through that with you. I don't know if there's a laser.
I'm just showing the lands on the west side.
Oh,
showing
okay.
the lands on the west
Right,
side.
thank you.
Trying to use technology to our advantage.
All right. Well, with that technology, can you go over to Cascade Locks? Yeah, and so about downstream of Cascade Locks, and then heading south, the crest of the Cascades, down just past Bend, just past here, to the 44th parallel, and then from the 44th parallel east, back kind of out the middle of nowhere out in the desert, and then to go back north up to the crest of the Blue Mountains, over to a creek called Willow Creek, and just
gotta
follow the
help me.
boundary.
Okay.
And then they'll go back to the Columbia, mid-channel of the Columbia, back to its original point. So that's 10 million
Okay, so
acres
this
of lands that
whole
we
zone.
ceded to the U.S. government.
Okay, right here.
And then all the green and the yellow you see there is, green is Forest Service, the yellow is BLM lands, and these are places that we regularly fish and hunt. All the white that you see on there, or tan, is private lands. So the only way we can exercise our treaty rights there is getting permission from the landowners there, which is sometimes really challenging to do at times. But that's described in the treaty, that boundary. It takes in all of the John Day Basin watershed, takes in all of the Hood River watershed, and it takes in most of the Deschutes Basin watershed. So away from the reservation, in all those little red patches, there are different land statuses. There are fee and in trust lands and allotments, we call them. And that's approximately 56,000 acres that the tribes own away from the reservation.
Okay, and just to clarify, that's all the red areas on the map?
All
Are
the
those
red that you see
56,000
there,
acres?
or,
Okay.
and some are contiguous to the reservation.
Okay, thank you.
So so now we're going to get into the sovereignty piece here, and I'm probably going to do a lot more reading here, because this is the parts of the Declaration of Sovereignty that the tribes did in 1992, and I'll be walking through that. But it's important that you hear what those are in our declaration. So of course, the 1855 treaty not only reserved all these rights, but it preserved our sovereignty, our nation, the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs. And we didn't relinquish, and moved to, and then the last one, this is when I get more into, this is our attorney's area here, and when you start what established sovereignty, and there's a famous Supreme Court decision, Worcester and Georgia in 1831. If anyone ever wants to go and look that up and find, you can read about how that strengthened the sovereignty of the tribes.
Can I ask maybe a silly question?
Sure.
Can you define sovereignty for everyone so everyone sort of understands what we're talking about?
Well, sovereignty is the ability, and has been the ability, for the tribes to govern ourselves and establish our own laws, our own rules, and how we manage ourselves. So this is all about our self-governance with our own sovereignty.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate that.
You made me think of something I'm not going to say. I was going to make a little joke, but. So in 1992, the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs worked on and their sovereignty statement. For each of the three tribes, which make up the Confederate Tribes, sent out a statement of its inherent and retained sovereignty. This was drafted by the Tribal Council and a very famous attorney. And some folks might know who this person was, very famous Indian law attorney, the late Professor Charles Wilkinson, the University of Colorado, and also was formerly at the University of Oregon. And he worked hard with the tribes. He was a great person to meet and talk with, and he was very trusted by our tribal council and our community, because when they did this, they went out and had community meetings with our tribal membership. They went to each of the longhouses and had discussions about our sovereignty and what should it say and what it means. And so there was a lot of meetings that happened during that that time period. And so this was well vetted with our tribal membership and our community when Tribal Council worked on this declaration. And this is from the declaration. At the time of creation, the Creator placed us on this land and gave us the voice of this land, and that is our law. Ultimate sovereignty is vested in the people, who receive their sovereign authority in the form of laws given by the Creator and by the land itself. We shall, as we always have, live in balance with the land and never use more of our precious natural resources than can be sustained forever. Our people have exercised inherent sovereignty as nations on the Columbia Plateau for thousands upon thousands of years, since time immemorial. Our sovereignty is permeated by spiritual and the sacred, which are and always have been, can't see that far, inseparable parts of our lives. For the Creator leads us in all aspects of our existence.
So reading test.
Yeah. Well,
An eyesight. It's an eyesight
glasses,
test.
once it gets down to a certain point, I can't see.
That's what I meant, not a reading test, an eye test.
Yeah. Ultimate sovereignty is vested in the people, who receive that sovereign authority in the form of laws given by the Creator and by the land itself. Our people have delegated only limited authority to the Tribal Council and have reserved the rest of our national sovereignty to ourselves. Now, this is important here, and what this is saying, and what I've read here to you so far, is us protecting our natural resources here that are very precious to us, that the Creator gave to us. But this sovereign authority lies in the people, in our people, and so they delegate certain authorities to the Tribal Council, but not all of that to them, because that's in with the people of the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs. So that's the important slide I just wanted to clarify, so people understand what that means and why that's so important. Today, the people of the Confederate Tribes continue to assert and exercise sovereign authority over the tribal reservation, other territory within tribal jurisdiction, territory that may come under tribal jurisdiction in the future, the protection of our rights, our people, and their welfare in all places. So an example of that, of exercising our rights in other places, is the tribes being co-managers with the state of Oregon. And I have a little slide there, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But it's important to know that since we govern ourselves and we're sovereigns, we set our own hunting and fishing regulations for our tribal membership. Example of that is Cowlitz River down by Longview, Washington. We have a smelt fishery down there every year. And so we set a season, work with the committees that the tribes have, our natural resource department does, work with tribal council, the fishermen, and they set the season down there. So that happens every year. That's an example of exercising our sovereignty and where we have jurisdiction of our laws. And again, this is the co-management piece as that example that I just gave. Another example is we're in our treaty, it's not just in those ceded lands or on the reservation that we're able to exercise our treaty rights. Those are up and down the Columbia River and in other states, in Oregon and Washington. So I just gave the example of Cowlitz River fishing. Also, we have tribal members that go up every year to Gifford Pinchot National Forest to go pick huckleberries. So that shows an example of where we're in a lot of different places up and down the river in other states, and exercising our sovereign authority and our co-management with states. It's not just also the state of Oregon, but it's other states.
All right. Thank you, Bobby.
Yes, you're welcome.
Austin, we're ready to shift
Yeah,
gears
let's do
here
this.
onto you.
Let's go there.
All right. And you're going to talk to us about restoration, I hear.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll lead off of what Bobby was talking about. So, good evening, everyone. Austin Smith Jr. My Indian name is Kamaya. I'm an enrolled tribal member of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. My parents are Warm Springs and Wasco. I grew up on a reservation my whole life up until 17 when I enlisted in the military. Went off, came back, and got my degree. In natural resource management. So I'm here to talk to you about the restoration projects, kind of leading from what Bobby was talking about, that co-management piece, as well as work that happens within our basin, the multiple watersheds within our ceded lands, and beyond to our usual and custom use stations. So with this map here is showing a little bit of description of what, one project that we conducted back almost a decade ago at this point. So we had identified a lot of different areas, not only within the Deschutes, but a lot of the tributaries that feed into. And we have a lot of natural wild stocks of steelhead and spring chinook that come on the reservation. In fact, majority of those are all wild stocks that go into this particular stream I'm going to talk, or this creek I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please. So just looking at a watershed, we realized that evaluating the amount of sediment, amount of habitat, amount of wild chinook that go up into these areas, and so the Shittite Creek, which actually flows right through the agency area of Warm Springs, was a high value, high priority area, being that this is one of those typical straighten the creek there, allow development to happen around it. That was pretty common, but also understanding the functionality of a watershed, right? So, I could think back to when my elders and my grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and they lived along this creek. Obviously, I could go back and look at photos from the early 1900s and see that they actually lived right on this area. But at the same time, it was functioning there. It would flood, it would wipe out infrastructure, and then they would build it back up. And so that meandering of the creek was very, very much lost. And also part of that was the amount of habitat for salmonids. And so this particular project was right in town. It was right in an area where everybody knew it was an issue. And so back when Bobby was a part of as general manager and running some of these programs, we moved forward and we looked at this watershed. So the map is showing you the Shittite Creek watershed that goes all the way up into some of these areas in the Cascades, like Mount Jefferson, and some of the headwaters. Were really critical cold water where bull trout, steelhead, and salmon, lamprey, everything goes up there and utilizes this. And so, and a small piece was starting at where it began. So that was right down there at the tributaries where it mouths right into the Deschutes River. So next slide. And so what we ended up doing was we did large-scale mechanical treatments in this area. Ultimately, stopping the stream in one spot, getting that effects of meandering back in there, creating pools, creating more habitat. And we knew that we needed habitat in here because we went out. We did snorkeling. I remember when I was early 2000s, when I was a field technician, we would go out and we would snorkel at night and during the day, and we would count fry and would count adults, we would count, and we knew that this area was very much just a fast-paced water where it just flushed everything out, and there wasn't productive habitat in there. Pools, side channels, cold water, that's stuff that you want for salmon, steelhead, and other fish aquatic species in the area, whether they're residential or anadromous coming back. So that was what this project was. It took a lot of manpower. It took a lot of planning. We don't have all the experts within our organization. So we obviously did contract out, working with a lot of different agencies like DRC, like PGE, and like those that have done these types of projects. And so those came in. Our project lead worked pretty much with the excavators coming in. It was pretty. I only had a few slides on here, and I wanted to throw every picture out there, right? Showing an excavator lifting up a log, moving rock, seeing the stream used to be there for hundreds of years. Well, now it's over here, diverted for the time being. So all of that, I mean, it was a pretty cool show. And the whole time this was going on, we still had fish in the area, fish outgoing, fish living. So you still had to be cognitive of that approach when you're doing this type of projects. And mind you, this is just one project I'm talking about. Next slide.
Can I ask how long that project took to complete? It sounds like you might have had a hand in it as well.
I did.
Yeah, it's like a little over 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And it's still ongoing with the measuring, because with a flood, obviously moves a lot of that debris, a lot of those root wads, and creates new channels, new areas. So there's also a lot of, hey, maybe we messed up here, or hey, let's squeak it a little bit and throw some boulders and some log stems in there,
Yep, adaptively managing.
Yep. So this is ultimately, you can see the old channel in there. It runs right through. Then you can see where it was meandered back and forth, and it's put into those side channels, which is very key and critical, especially one, it creates habitat for aquatic species, terrestrial aquatic species, loons, ducks, frogs, everything, lamprey, the sediment there types, everything utilizes those. And so we were missing that. I mean, shooting right, and this is this one piece of the Deschutes, but it was high priority value area. And so very productive. I look back at some of the updated numbers. There's even a lot of different fish that actually would create reds in some of these areas. So that was pretty unique, seeing that you brought the gravel in that they are going to utilize to create a red and eventually have some salmonids coming out. So pretty cool project. We've also done this in different areas of the reservation. So this is Deschutes Creek. The next one up was the Mill Creek, which was the Potter's Pond, which was basically back from the big boom in logging days, held logs, and it channelized and shot straight through. Well, now that the logging boom kind of passed, we wanted to put that back into productive standpoint for aquatic fish species. So that's what we did. Same thing. I wish I had more pictures of that. We actually have a video out there showing that. And so I can provide some of those links to those videos. Yahoo Films did a really good shot of that project, all the mechanisms, all the funders that were in play, and then the team just working together, that collaborative management. So next slide.
So sorry, go ahead.
I got to say something about that project. So that project, I was waiting for you. How long did it take? That project was one that went in phases. And the first phase of working on that Potter's Pond project at Mill Creek started in the late 80s. And so from the late 80s all the way up to now, there's still being work conducted in that area.
Yeah, these things take a long time. So just to clarify, the straight shot through that photo is the channelized creek, and then you guys put all the meanders back in it. Okay, just wanted to make sure I could see that correctly and everybody else could see that.
Now, I also want to talk not only about the watershed health. There's also work that has to be done in the upland habitat work. So this is still in the Deschutes Basin. These are in the foothills of the Mutton Mountains, which is in the northeast portion of the reservation. That border of the Deschutes River flowing through. A lot of you guys who probably fly fish or floated and did the splash and giggle floated right past some of this area, right? So right here is what we have is youth tribal members. Summer job. So what are youth great for? I was one of them. It's planting trees, digging holes, labor work, right? But we're also showing them, teaching them, and giving them the understanding of why they're doing this. Obviously, this is a pond that does not have any shoreline vegetation. And that's key and critical for everything. I mean, you have livestock exclusion in this area now. This is one area, a project that was specifically identified because of the uniqueness of these ponds and what they provide habitat to for the bird species, my wildlife background. they utilize it. The livestock still can utilize it, but it's to the point where they don't want them knocking the heck out of the brush. They're only put in there for a certain time period, just like anybody that was a responsible grazer. So that's was part of this is our attempt. This is a newer project for us. It was pretty neat because it showed that like we're putting the shoreline vegetation back in and also addressing the noxious weeds, the invasives that come in, just dominate the area and really take from those soil types. That's a really good picture there.
So you guys planting willows and
Yep.
things like that?
Willows. We actually went to our culture and heritage, talked about what they wanted to see plant. So willows, rushes, all native stuff. Choke cherries, so foods, fibers, medicine. That was basically the message we were given, and so we really lean on that. And just like Bobby talked about the foods, the waters, the fibers, the flesh, all of those are what offer themselves to us as people, and so we need to steward them. And I had it described to me as it was a covenant between them and us to manage it. As long as we took care of those, they would always take care of us. And we had to let them know it's important. That's what we're doing with these youth. Some of them never left the reservation agency area. They never went out into the woods. They never went down to the creek or the river. They never went on this dirt road until they filled out a hire form and got selected to come out and work with us at Natural Resource. So this was part of teaching them that. And some of them go off. So a lot of them are in college now, or they work for us now. They came back. So that was part of my story. Next. Other upland habitat work we're doing, obviously fuels. Major forest fires have really devastated Central Oregon and our watersheds. And so we've realized that a lot more fuels management is having to happen, especially with longer climate seasons, right? So fuel growth, right now we don't have much for snow and snowpack, but we're going to be getting a lot of rain, but it's going to be in a form that's going to be very inviting for invasives, for longer growing seasons. That means more fuel on the ground. There's going to be more beetles, more bugs, more disease. They're not going to get hammered back by the coldness and the freezing, which usually knocks that back and allows that snowpack and a type of snowpack to happen. So what we're doing here is you can see there's actually the orders a little mixed up, but first we went in, we did hand thinning, we did mechanical. So this here is a machine that's going through and brushing down these fuels into a fine piece, knocking it down, letting it get into the soil for decomposition. And so it's knocking down, typically it's 6-inch DBH and smaller. So that's your breast height in diameter of your tree, brush, whatever. Knocking it down to a point where we knew historically this was the density of these areas. And this area is just up on a Cowdy Creek that flows into the Beaver, which flows into Warm Springs, that flows into the Deschutes. So it's all the uplands work. So, and this was really key for sediment. A lot of these areas are just heavy, thick, full of stuff. And so then after that, next treatment was adding fire back into the ecosystem. But it has to go in phases. It can't just be cut it, burn it, expect it to come back. Next is after the fire is putting seed down, seed stock, grass, native stuff. So that's the upland work we're also doing.
I'm curious if you guys have always used burning as a management tool, like historically.
Historically, yes. A lot of the teachings have shown that we've utilized it in huckleberry fields, into our meadows, wet meadows and dry meadows for different roots. We used it on like our tule marshes to enhance that growth. And we've also used it in some extent for hunting, flushing, and managing, that different invasives. And of course, it was key. So the way it was taught to me was that you'd have certain people in your group, in your tribe, young men, young boys, not firebugs. They were responsible ignition specialists, right? Their job was to light off the huckleberry field as the frost came in, as the families moved down into their fall and winter grounds of their village. Maybe they're heading back to Solilo, getting ready for the later runs. Maybe they're heading back into Willamette, getting ready to go harvest different plants. But they would light off these areas and they'd walk away, and those fires would creep and creep and creep all fall before a season-ending rain event happened and snow showed up, and then it was nourished by the nutrients. And so that cycle just continued over and over again in different aspects, and different tribes have different methods, but that was one I understood that was utilized.
And with that, those burns were light burns. They were managing the forests for thousands of years. The tribes have been, and so they were able to walk away. We didn't have these large fire events because it was regularly maintained. So these forests have been managed by the tribal people for thousands of years, and I don't think folks quite understand that. And why we were doing it is Austin described, is because we're taking care of these huckleberries and these things important to us. And made me think about my great grandfather, who was one of those people that did those type of burns back in the day. So a lot different fire ecology now in the forest compared to back when people like my great grandfather were still doing that type of work.
Thank you.
Yeah, next slide. So new stuff that we're doing. This was a pretty interesting project here. So this is also in the uplands. This all flows down into the Deschutes, as we're doing new type of treatment methods, right? We used to jump in a helicopter and throw seed out, maybe pesticides with, stuff like that. So we're doing it on a micro level right now. So, but what you see here is a huge drone. It can carry anywhere from 30 to 80 pounds of seed. So this is post-fire seeding. So what's it doing is it's flying over an area that we actually use a LiDAR, shooting light down at the trees, bouncing back, getting the growth, and also a hypersensitive flight of the soil types was identified with this drone. And you're able to send these things up in the air. It'll map your project area based off of your grid. It'll identify areas where it can seed based on the cover type. There could be rocks, there could be boulders, there could be areas that are just too thick canopy. So it'll identify those as not key areas, not very successful. So it makes your dollar go a lot farther. So once it does a screen, it comes back and it gives you an idea of where you're gonna seed. So then we put our seed into the drone. It's sent up and it's using all of this sophisticated technology, right? But it goes and it goes on its grid. It starts seeding, and as soon as it's done, it knows, it comes back, and we have a team that will jump up there, reload it, redeploy it. And so they seeded a handful of acres here post fire, obviously, and post treatment. And what we're going to get from that is we're going to get a beneficial growth of seed, bunchgrass, Idaho fescues, all of those native ones that you want to come back. Because right now, we didn't have major programs doing this because of funding issues, because of manpower. And so this is one method that we started utilizing. So this is one project. Our next project is going to be right off the Deschutes. It's called Skookum Creek. So there's an area right there. A lot of you guys may have floated by it. I'm doing the splash and giggle or fly fishing, but it's right. That's a really cool spot because it's been fenced off. A lot of the junipers have been removed, and now they're going to go in, map it, and seed the areas post burn.
So going back to a time pre-drone and when you all were regularly burning, did you also do seeding following burns, or you did? Okay.
Yeah. It's not as at this scale.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
No drones.
Mm-hmm.
Helicopters.
Yeah, helicopters. And so I'll talk also about, we had a lot of different work happen in Deschutes, everything from working with partners, working with NGOs, working with the co-management piece, everything from the Upper Deschutes, Middle Deschutes, Trout Creek, on reservation. I could go on and on. There's a lot of different areas been working, but we've also done this already. We've already demonstrated as a tribe. And so we've and been in other different watersheds. Bobby talked about the Willamette, where we go. We talk about the John Day, that's in our ceded lands, and the Hood River, which is also within our ceded lands, and it's heavily fished areas. So these areas, I have just some pictures showing some of that. We've done mechanical. We've one in there. We put BDAs, or beaver dam analogs, in to invite that watershed to be lifted up, right? So that's been pretty successful. And also mitigation for inundation of these areas from the John Day and the Dells. That's what type of areas we're offsetting those. So these are some of the areas. Next slide, please. So this one here is actually over in the Willamette Valley. It's a Red Hills. It serves as a wildlife and restoration property. It's primarily a mixture of conifers, oak, savannas, and so we actually, this map is very outdated. We've actually done a timber sale over, or a timber treatment, I should call, but we also were able to remove some stems, get them some payments for those, and any money taken off of anything taken off the land, you make money for it, goes back into the property. That's a part of our mitigation. So all of what was sold goes back in there. So it's treatments, and so we're trying to get back to that oak savanna type. And that's what's been well known within the Willamette. So this is just a small piece of property where we're doing that, and there is opportunity there for hunting, for gathering.
In oak savannas in the Willamette Valley are rare. So this is really a special piece of property in the Willamette Valley.
Also, I think probably due to the exclusion of fire, right? From what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Go ahead, next slide. Another area that we were pretty key in purchasing was this area called Austin Hot Springs. That's just right off the Clackamas there, and it was pretty key because it's surrounded by Forest Service lands. It's right on a main route traveled, but it's in key areas where you have habitat, and we're able to do type of habitat projects like I explained we did along the Deschutes, up in our different watersheds on the reservation, is put that woody debris and create that water habitat, increase that water in the area, make it more escapement areas for salmonid fries and from the hangout. And the other area was Little Sweden, which is right off the Mackenzie there, like you're heading over the pass. There, and some of you may have driven by that sign, Little Sweden. Well, the tribes own that property, and it's the same thing. It's one of those properties that we purchased. One, I know Bobby's told this story before. The family was very connected to our tribe. Family would travel over into the Willamette, and they would always stop there at this historical site and camp there, and were able to go and fish and access it. So when the families willed it basically to the tribe, right? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, their grandparents said that if this property was ever to be sold, it had to be sold to Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, because that was their good friends that came from there, stayed there, fished, gathered, hunt. So that was pretty cool to have a family remembering their friends from Warm Springs and wanted the property to only go to Warm Springs. And then Austin Hot Springs is a important cultural place for the tribes too, because of the hot springs. We took the committees out there, we took the culture committees, and they said this is a significant place to us, to Indian people. And so we really wanted it also protected along with all the habitat attributes it had to it.
Go ahead, next one. Oh,
There is no
there
next
you
one.
go.
Although, before we get there, I'm curious, do you want to talk about any of these books?
Oh.
You don't have to, but.
Well, Lisa has some books up here, and some of them I have recommended to her and for folks to read. And one of them is the George Aguilar Sr., When the River Ran Wild, is a good book to read about the tribes and the fishing on the Columbia. Another good book, there's really good chapters in there. It's called the Wheel of Fortune, which is by Francis Seaford, and the Seaford family had a cannery in the Dalles, And so they were really close to the tribal fishermen there because they were providing fish to them. So they, in their book, Francis talks about their relationship with the tribes there. And if you ever see photos of the Celilo Falls and you see the trolleys going back and forth, those cable trolleys, those were put in by the Seaford family so they could help deliver fish quicker to their cannery and as fresh as they could. So they were able to pull them back and forth there. So a little tidbit about that. And then the other two books you have here is the Forgotten Tribes, and that is by Donald
Donald M. Hines.
Hines. And then the first Oregonians, and it's one of several editions.
All right, we'll have these in the back too if anybody wants to take a look. All right, well, with that, I think we are moving on to the portion of the presentation where you all get to ask questions. I think we are going to have a mic that is going to circulate the audience. Oh, Alex is in the back with the mic. We will ask that you wait until you have the mic only so the audience at home can hear your questions. So, right up here in the front.
Thank you, Bobby and Austin and the rest of the tribal members that are here tonight and for this presentation. My question is, given the what we've seen on the Klamath River with the removal of 4 dams and the Yurok tribe and the other tribes on the Klamath, the Yurok tribes have actually declared the Klamath as they've given it personhood and kind of the rights of nature, which is a movement that's both international and also starting to pick up steam in the United States. So my question is, could you ever see the Warm Springs tribes doing the same with the Deschutes system, giving it personhood and possibly even potentially having the dams removed someday so we could actually restore the anadromous fish runs in the whole Deschutes Basin, including the Metolius, the Deschutes, and the Crooked Rivers?
That is way down the road. The dams there are the major income provider for the tribes, the number one revenue maker for the tribes that runs our government and our committees and that. So that's way down the road. The person thing, I'm not familiar with that.
Personhood?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So is that what they're doing? So I have read what's going on in the papers about the success they've had, but that's it's been really cool to read and see some of those fish coming back. But each basin is different, and I think people need to realize that each basin is different. We've been part of places like on the Hood River, Powerdale Dam. We participated in that directly in the removal of Powerdale Dam. We have a hatchery on the Hood River, Spring Chinook there. They were extirpated, Spring Chinook, for years. About 30 years ago, the tribes, working with others and our partners and using Bonneville Power funding, put a hatchery in there. And now we have Spring Chinook that are coming up, and they're spawning gravel to gravel. So they don't all just head to the hatchery and are picked up there. We move them upstream, and so we have a success story there where it was been interesting to me watching this because over the years we started having a fishery there for our tribal members and success there, so much so that even the state of Oregon decided, hey, maybe we'll have a fishery there too. So.
All right, we got another question up here.
So you recognize me? Hi, Bobby. You kind of touched on the economic question on my brain. That is how the tribe has its own financial resources, and of course, the Billy Chinook complex is certainly a main source. We're in a very difficult time now. I think most of us know things are not going so well, at least in my opinion, for us. And I wonder how the tribe is handling the situation. I assume there is federal funds that you receive, and maybe some of those are uh, not coming through as they used to. Certainly for our agencies, the Forest Service and the BLM are experiencing very difficult times, both in terms of personnel and funding. So my question, and you're surrounded, of course, you have Forest Service and BLM that hopefully you are working with and you partner with, I know. So as we go through these difficult times, can the tribe step in to help maintain effective resource management for the fisheries, the wildlife, et cetera? That's one of my questions, to backfill at least maybe until things improve a little bit.
Yes, it's been challenging times for sure. I know over the years for natural resources, capacity's been limited for personnel there. Here, and I'm going to punt over to Austin because recently here they've are really getting staffed up right now, and one of the reasons is because federal agencies are losing people or people are leaving, and so they're going to the tribes. And I'll let Austin.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question on the economic side and the approach on lands, basically the open and unclaimed lands, as well as the claimed lands, on what type of funds are available. So yes, there are a lot of funds being cut. I mean, you're talking like NRCS dollars, Farm Services dollars. A lot of those private funds are trying to back those up. So we've seen that on our end. We were very lucky on our end because we lobbied ahead. You know, we've been in this situation before. We've been here for a long time. We've been through multiple organizations and agencies and different parties types with agendas, and so we're very resilient. And we understand, like, hey, we just have to keep our head down, keep our guns ready, get us in that direction, right? When fire comes, we return it, but that's reasonable. So I use that analogy because I'm a former Marine. So, or I am a Marine, not a former.
Yeah,
So, but we've been lobbying a lot. We've been working with representatives. We've been really hammering at the Hill, saying like this is the importance of the management of resources. So when the Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, when they lose funding and they lose people, that affects the tribes really hard. And so we've been lobbying for them. We go right up to the BIA and let them know we need your support, supporting X, Y, and Z on the Hill. And so that's been helpful. The outlook and my response on the energy piece is that energy is always going to be here. Everyone's always going to need it. You're always going to need the lights on. And what form of energy is probably the question that I have to ask. You know, there's, as technology advances, I see someday down the road, maybe not in my lifetime, but some way down the road before our fish become extinct, those dams will be removed and that river can bleed and flow. Because right now, I mean, we're seeing it. We've seen it on the Klamath. We see it on the Deschutes. We're seeing it on the Snake and the Columbia. It is a living being. Mother Earth is living. We know that. We're only here as a flea or a fly or whatever you may call ourselves. Irritating, but it is living, and it states it deserves a voice. And I think that's part of what the tribes have been really hammering on. And down the road, like Bobby said, in a long time from now, I see it happening. But I want to talk a little bit about our Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative, which was signed off. We were lobbying for a lot of this. Let the tribes take point on alternative energy development to show that these dams can be removed or the flows can change to benefit salmon, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking out for is the salmon in the water. It's not just about the pocket, but yeah.
All right. Hold on, you're getting a mic back.
I was really excited to see that the Warren Springs youth joined the youth from the tribes on the Klamath to make that the first float down the Klamath system from the top to the bottom. And I'd rather you say that, but I want to be sure people know. It was really exciting for me because I'm a boater, I'm a kayaker, a floater, and I was so happy inside to see that happen because I love rivers, and I was glad to see the tribal people take part with the tribes there and do that float. And some of you may have seen that program on NPR or PBS.
Yeah, that's a reference to the first descent by a group of tribal members on the Klamath once the dams were removed. So for those of you that might not have seen that, it was a group of pretty much predominantly, if not all youth, tribal youth that floated, were the first floaters down the Klamath.
And some of our Warm Springs children were there
Yes.
too, joining them because they're mixed blood. They have relatives down there and they wanted to go down. But kind of just to give you an idea on our governance, we have a long-standing, strong governance relationship with the United States and the state of Oregon and the state of Washington and California. And a lot of that was always our elders always advocated for our rights, our sovereign rights. And we believe that every living entity, that includes our water, our air, the human being, the animals, the fish, are a sovereign entity. And because we're indigenous people, we are their voice. We have to stand up. And we were really blessed with strong and traditional leaders that explained all of this to the United States. And we were blessed with open-hearted government officials. And one of our leaders, Atwai Ken Smith, a beloved leader of our tribe, was the Assistant Secretary of Interior at one time. He served under the Reagan administration. And but we have strong relationships with our senators, state and federal. And so we're very advanced. We've taught, anytime Warm Springs walked into the National Congress of American Indians or affiliated tribes of the Northwest, everybody got quiet because of our resilience and because of our governing power. And we still haven't lost that. We're more silent, we quiet, we're watching all the time, and we're listening. And sometimes when politics changes, you'll notice that we'll stand back a little bit and let things play out, but we'll never stop advocating for our rights. And so we have a strong governmental presence for the state of Oregon. We're the only tribe that never gave up our sovereign rights for funding or anything. We're the only tribe that stepped forward, and we objected every time people try to negotiate with us. So that's just something that you need to know. In many tribal nations across the United States, Navajo likes to stand up and say they're no, they're not. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs is. We helped them develop their tribal court system. We've had law enforcement. See, law enforcement for our nation was our uncles and our fathers and our grandfathers. Probation officers were mothers, aunts, fathers, grandfathers, like that. We already had a system in place where we uplifted our people. So that is the ultimate goal of tribal nations. And even we suffer the same suffrage of addiction and no matter what it is. We go through the same thing that society does because you got to remember alcohol has only been in this region for about 180 years. So our bodies are still adjusting to those foreign drugs. And so we're still learning about those things, but our tribal government, especially our leaders like Bobby and Kenny and now Edward, his first cousin, are doing what they can to continue forward. But we do have a strong history for the Northwest.
Nice.
Good evening. I just want to ask, how can we help?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I just wanted to ask, how can we help best?
How can we help, gentlemen?
Well, any type of support's always very helpful for the tribes. And when I say that is, as you just heard Leona, we work a lot with federal agencies, with the politicals, and we work on some really good projects and big projects over time. We're always looking for more funding for our programs in Warm Springs. So any support, and when I say that, I mean, letters of support and getting hold of your congressionals or whoever representatives, or just at times, sometimes it's just a little funding. We do have a place where funding can go, donations to the tribes. We have for like our water, we still have critical needs for our water infrastructure in Warm Springs. And so we have the Choose Fund there. You can look that up online and be able to donate funding there to the tribes to help us out. So there's many different ways to be able to help support the tribes, and just getting general support, whether it's funding or not, just saying, hey, we support the tribes and want to make sure they're being helped.
Thank you.
Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can. Come to our casino. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm just kidding. No, yeah, sorry about that.
That was good.
No, the just voicing yourself and calling in, maybe like Bobby said, with your representative, with your local leaders, your state leaders, and your national level leaders. And I like it when people comment or jump on a forum, and it could be anybody, but they could jump on there, and as long as they hear that repetition of awareness, that's really helps us out. Because I know everyone in here has a voice, and a strong voice of your passion for the Deschutes, for the fish, and everything that makes Oregon, Oregon. That type of voice really does help us out in the long run. And it could be recognizing the tribes in an area you're at. It can be going and donating to different programs, nonprofits, etc. Any of those, attending these type of events. I know this is going to be streamed all over different networks. I think that's great. It's unique. It's all over the place. But I don't think we go far enough, like internationally. I mean, we need to see more of it, because they don't know what's going on. All they hear about what's in the news. What's that silly old fox or that silly old peacock saying, right? They want to know what the people of this nation is saying about what they believe in, what the resource. I think I truly believe in that, because I seen it when I was international. Like, you guys know we're doing this? Like, no, we didn't know that. And so now they do, and they're going to share that and share that and share that. So.
And along with that is, you heard us talk about support. A lot of what you see, especially if you see it out in the news about what Warm Springs is doing, is well thought out. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs just don't do knee-jerk reactions to things. Everything the tribe does is well thought out. It's working with our policy team in Warm Springs. It's working with our tribal council very closely. It's working with our tribal membership and community meetings, and a lot of stuff is vetted out and worked on hard before you outside the reservation hear about those projects. And that's when we've worked on this pretty hard and we know what we're doing, and that's when we like to see support.
Well, Alex finds the next question. I'm going to ask and interject, actually. No, actually, no, I'll wait. You go ahead.
And to answer your question a little bit more, you need to know who we are and understand that we're supreme in this land. And when you understand the sovereignty and the treaty supremeness of this country, that's where I believe you're going to help us the most, is spreading the word about to the U.S. citizens that aren't aware of that and how this land came to what it is today. because the treaty is the supreme law of this land. It comes, if you don't understand that, read the Constitution of the United States of America. Article 6 defines the treaty as the supreme law and that all state judges must comply with it. And I think when you can understand that and go out and spread amongst your family and your community and your state or whoever you're representing, and you tell that story, I think we're going to bring order back to this country.
All right, feel free to keep your hands up. I'm just going to interject a quick question. I just want to go back to the Confederated tribes and the 3 tribes and how you all came to be the Confederated tribes, just because I'm curious about that. You can give us a 10,000 foot view if you want.
All right. Yeah. So the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs. So I mentioned earlier about the 3 tribes, the Warm Springs, the Wascos, and the Paiute tribes. So the 2 treaty tribes are Warm Springs and Wasco. We're the ones that negotiated with the U.S. government for the lands and everything in the treaty. The Paiute people came later on in the late 1870s, about 1877 in that area to our reservation. They were actually being moved from one place and they were heading home. And the cavalry stopped them in Warm Springs and they got stuck. And the cavalry and the U.S. Army said they just figured Indians are Indians, they're all the same, and they didn't let them go home. So they got stuck on our reservation. And so over the years, it wasn't until, as I mentioned earlier, on February 14th, 1938, because of the Reorganization Act for tribes, that we established our constitution that set up the governance and who our tribal council is, and that's when they incorporated the Paiute people into our confederacy through the constitution that we all live by now, to this day, right now. And so it's one. I have my backpack there. I have it with me everywhere I go. That constitution for the tribes, and a lot of tribal members have their versions too, and that's how we became a confederacy.
Thanks. All right, back to the audience questions.
You mentioned the Trush Fund and water donations, and I was curious if you could speak a little bit more about access to clean drinking water and what the situation is at the moment.
Yeah, for Warm Springs, over the last 3 or 4 years, you've been reading about drinking water in Warm Springs. We've had aging infrastructure. There's been a lot of work here recently over the years to get that infrastructure up in a better condition. And when I say that, that means pipes, means the water treatment plant. The water that the community of Warm Springs gets, the little town of Warm Springs, comes from the Deschutes River, directly from the Deschutes River, and it goes to Warm Springs and also to Canita. It's piped to Canita. That is an old facility. It was built in the early 1980s, and it's aging out. And so there's been a lot of funding put into it to get it up to a decent standard. There's been times where it's just been shut completely down. And, and you've seen people come helping, and we really appreciated coming to Warm Springs and handing out bottled water and that for our community there. So there's looking at, they've been upgrading that water treatment plant, and they don't want to spend too much money onto it. They just want to get it stabilized, because they're also looking at and been talking about building a brand new water treatment plant, which is several years down the road. And then there'll be a transition between the old and the new. And then, so that's where that's at right now. And the tribes are always looking for funding to move that forward, because it's not cheap. It's very expensive to put these these systems in, especially when you're talking about a modern, up-to-date water treatment facility. So there's a ton of work. I know in my former job as Secretary, Treasurer, CEO, that lays on the shoulders of my of Edward, and he's working with his team really close on that now, and it's been a challenge, but it's moving forward. And but maybe back to the other earlier question, how can you help Warm Springs? Maybe that's put some money into the Choose Fund that would help fund that.
All right, other questions? Anyone online? Oh, here we go.
Thanks. Hi, you mentioned some projects that you've been working out in other areas. You mentioned Cham Hill, Clackamas, Sandiam, Cowlitz. I'm sure there's probably projects where you collaborate with other tribes, tribal nations throughout the area on restoration work. Maybe there's even some in the John Day Basin. I was wondering if you could say something about, what makes those successful, those collaborations.
Yeah. So the creation of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, which is the 4 treaty tribes, Warm Springs, Yakima Nation, Umatilla tribes, and Nez Perce. So we do collaborate pretty closely with those Crit-Fit tribes, as we call them, because of one, how strong our treaties are. Even those are Stevenson and Palmer treaties that were signed in 1855, kind of like the back-to-back-to-back type of treaties. But we also are the same type of people. We come from the same place. So we work really closely, not only on the main stem Columbia River, but other project areas. So we have delegates from our leadership, from our tribal council, and from our natural resources and our committees that travel and go to these different areas. They meet periodically on projects, how funding is to be input and sent out to different project areas. So some of the projects I talked about, like the Shatite Creek, and other projects like the John Day mitigation lands that we own and manage, Middle Fork, John Day, North Fork, some of those areas, we get funding through these funded mechanisms with the Bonneville Power Administration for the offsets for, losing our fishery, losing our fishing and hunting grounds, our gathering sites. And so those other tribes do the same thing in their areas, but we also have some areas that are very similar. So we do collaborate on that aspect. Now, bouncing over into the Willamette Valley, we do the same thing over there with the other tribes that are recognized in the area. And so we collaborate on some of the land pieces there, what projects other organizations are doing. So we sit on actual committees and working groups that evaluate projects for the benefit of the tribes and their resources, as long as it's benefiting our first foods and everything else.
One of the other areas, when talking about the Willamette, a good example of that is the Portland Harbor Superfund site. We've been involved in that since day one, along with several other tribes that also sit at the table. And as they go through that process in cleaning up the Portland Superfund area, all that industrial area, and also mitigating the effects and finding ways to take care of some of these resources important to us, wetlands and roots and that. And so that is something, I was at the very first meeting in 2002 to that, and it's still going today, and it'll still be going probably when Austin retires.
Hold on, we're going to give you the mic again. Sorry. Alex? Oh, sorry.
Hi,
Oh, wait. Okay,
Hi.
sorry.
Sorry, Lisa. I'd just like to go back to a little bit where we just were about the water and then what you were just speaking about, the funding.
Mhm.
I've written lots of letters to the senators and congressmen and the BIA, and I think others, others have as well, but we can't stop. We have to keep writing to them and asking for funding for these projects for the tribes. So I just wonder what you think about that. Is that a good idea?
Yes, and thank you. We greatly appreciate that. I know we've had the both senators out to that water treatment plant a couple years ago, and all these letters of support really help out and helps them support our projects and moving forward as they go back to Washington.
Can you bring the mic back up here, Alex?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, and then we'll take the question online. Go ahead.
Okay. Also, you asked about the relationship between the 9 tribes. We do have the 9 tribes of Oregon, and they have successfully negotiated and collaborated for water conservation. So there is organizations out there. This happens to be one of them, and support for this organization too would help the tribe. And so. Don't focus just on one, but think of these people taking the time out of their lives to make our life better. And we got to remember Deschutes County has grown about 30% in the last 10 years. Redmond has grown about 24% in the last 10 years. And you can imagine how that's putting a strain on our water. And I feel bad for our farmers. That's our food production. They're land caretakers too, just like us. And we got to respect our farmers and those caretakers, and encourage your children to get educations and come to work and bring their expertise to our people. And now our tribe, for instance, I'm getting my master's in public policy, and I'm old, and I'm almost 65 years old, and I'm a widow. That's how I got through my mourning from my husband. Was my education. I went back to school. I got my undergrad at OSU here in Bend, and now I'm working on my master's, and maybe hopefully have work towards a PhD. And so policy is part of human life. The Bible is policy. Our unwritten laws for tribal peoples are policy that we have with God. And your organizational charts are policy, written through policy. Your laws here in the state, in the county, in the city, that's all policy. So we're interconnected more than you think. We just happen to be the host here in Central Oregon. But I appreciate all the questions of how you can help, and not only our politicians, but the Chush Fund and to organizations like this that help Central Oregon.
Thank you. So shifting to a question that we have online that's related to what we've been talking about, but what other opportunities exist to get to know the tribes better and better understand tribal culture?
Yeah, good question. Going to forums like this to learn about the tribes and get a good understanding. I'm thinking about Delson's words about really learn about us and who we are. We just live 50 miles away from here, but everybody's sitting in our territories here that have identified in our treaty. Other ways to get to know the tribes is there are things online. There's some books here that we just recommended. We have events. We have our treaty days. The week of June 25th is always our treaty days, Payumsha, and that's open to the public. So anyone can go down there, go to the powwow, look at all the different events that are going on. There's parades, rodeos, endurance races, marathons. There's all kinds of things to do near Payumsha, and you'll get to see our culture and get to eat some of the foods that we have there. Also, our longhouses are open on Sundays. So, there's people are welcome to go to those and go to services that tribes have. There's a lot of different things out there that folks can go look at for Warmer Springs and how to learn about us. I'm always amazed at how people here in Central Oregon that may have grew up. I just recall this one event. Oh, this person grew up here in Bend, lived here all their lives. They were in their 50s. I went and spoke at this event, and after I got done speaking, this person came up to me and said, I didn't know there was a reservation 50 miles from here. So that type of stuff really amazes me, and all our tribal members that are here too. They've run into the same things, people not knowing who we are, and sometimes they're just, I think, afraid to go to our reservation. I had an experience just recently here a week ago. I was at a restaurant and I was eating by myself, and there was a table across from me that was talking about Warm Springs, and they were talking about don't go there. There's high crime, and they were going on, and one of the people on their table said, "You're being racist," and they had this dialogue about Warm Springs and Indian people, and they didn't know a native sitting there was like, this is the stuff that we still deal with, and I was really disappointed.
And I organized the First Peoples event. I organized the First Peoples event that takes place every year. It became an annual event because it was very successful. And they bring in our regalia and they bring in our dancers. And I taught one of the professors there how to organize it. So I organized it the first year. And I said, from this day forward, you will follow my footprints. And that's what we call them, our footprints. So Mike Cooper, who's a professor at OSU Cascades, he was really scared the first year. He called me, Leona, can we have lunch? Yes. And so, I don't know if I could, you're doing fine. He had everything set up. I said, now you just have to do the day. So OSU Cascades does a First Peoples event every year around the first or second week in October. So that's an option. You can invite, if you belong to organizations or committees or commissions or boards, you can invite us to speak. But make sure you invite the right one. Because if you have somebody coming in there and blasting left and right, if they are demeaning in any way, that's not the right teacher. Native American teachers are uplifting. They don't behave like they're superior. They don't behave like other races are a bad thing, because that's not how we were taught. That's not how we behave. So I remember I had two tribal councilmen, one from Umatilla, one from Warm Springs. And I just happened to walk into this meeting at the governor's office. And they were in these big chambers. And these two people began yelling and screaming at our governmental officials. And I interceded. And I apologized. And just like when I opened up, we believe we're on holy ground once meetings and collaborations start. And I apologized for those two young men. Well, they weren't young, they were older than me. And I apologize because it is not tribal leadership's way to bring friction when we're all on equal standing as government to government. That's not how we were raised. And I remember the guy from Umatilla leaned over. Who is that woman? That's the daughter of Chief Fred Ike Sr. And they shut up. And every time they spoke after that, only one of them did. They talked in a calm, respectful voice. And the governor's office came up and thanked me. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we need to know that too, because they're learning because they have the wrong teachers. They don't have people like me coming in and saying, this is how we do it. They're bringing people that learned about our culture. And it's sad because even in our own tribal nations, they're learning. I grew up in it all my life. I'm probably the last person in our region to have all 9 ceremonies. The last one. Now I have a great granddaughter, and now I'm doing her ceremony. So for that generation, then it will live on. But that's really important, who you get to come to speak, to have that knowledge. And one way you can find out, how many ceremonies do you have? They have one. Go like this. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's interesting and good to meet you. Do that. I wouldn't have any speaker with 5 or less ceremonies. I have my conception, my birth, my baby board, my umbilical cord separation. After that, I got my Indian name, and that allows me to progress forward. Then I got my first foods after my Indian name. Then after my Indian name, I got first cook. That means first time you cook for your family. Then after that, I got my first shump. When you receive your first shump, that's when you can get up and talk about government. That's when you can get up and talk about history. You have to have that first shump. And so I received that at 10 because my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were preparing me to speak like this, to an audience like this. And so my last ceremony, my 9th one, was when I became a regalia maker. And I can't handle foods. I can't make baby boards. I can't do certain things because I make outfits for bodies that pass away, and I'm preparing them for eternal life. I'm usually always by myself because of that. And on top of it, I do that to honor my ancestors and God, our Creator. I do that to honor my husband who passed away in 2016. I'm a widow. And I want to honor him till, he was mischief. My husband, I'm his 4th wife. But he is my only husband because I was raised traditionally. And I told him that. When he was getting ready to pass, he was asking me if I was going to remarry. And I said, I'm a traditionalist. I only marry once. And I'm married to you till I see you again. So you got to think of things like that. So be careful who you invite into your circle. If they make you feel good and make you feel blessed and make you feel honored, those are your teachers. And I was blessed with many professors like that at my college experience. So be kind to each other. That's our first teaching: love, kindness, and compassion, because that will guide the ethics of your life. We all make mistakes. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. If any of you grew up then, I was mischief too. But I pulled out of that by the time I was 24. I've been alcohol and drug free this January for 40 years. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to push on. If they make you feel good, they're the right teacher. So just remember that. That's part of our sovereign responsibility, is to let other people know that, our neighbors know that, because not everybody is. That's just like for every other community. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want to add something? Okay. Yeah. It's hard to follow that, but I do just want to do a shout out to the Warm Springs Museum. If you have not been up to see the museum, I would really encourage you all to make a trip up and check it out, because it is pretty amazing, and it will help you on your journey to learn more. Also, we will do our best to help you on your journey to learn more by sending out just the titles or covers of all these books titles that we mentioned, as well as other links that we've discussed, and any other information that we can pass along to help you all. But with that, I think it is time to wrap up. So I want to thank you all very, very much for coming and for being interested. And I really want to thank both of you for being here and you for being here, and really all the tribal members that made the trip and that came to share tonight. Really appreciate it. So thank you, and happy holidays.